Hi, I'm Chef Regina Charbonneau, and we're going to talk about beef bourguignon today. I'm going to share a recipe. You know, Julia Child is known for her beef bourguignon, and I love Julia. She was a great person, and I was fortunate enough to get to know her a bit. In fact, I learned a very valuable lesson from Julia. It had nothing to do with food. Don't ever drink bourbon with someone 2 feet taller than you. But anyway, Julia was great. But even though I agree with so many of her cooking techniques, there are a couple of things that I feel I've kind of improved upon, and things that I learned from my grandmother and great aunts in Louisiana. And I think with Julia's beef bourguignon, to me, she never really got the meat brown enough, and we're going to talk about that today. The other thing is that I'm not a fussy cook. Like if I put fresh herbs in, I don't tie it up in cheesecloth, just use a strainer afterwards. So this is beef bourguignon. These are the key ingredients. So you've got, of course, your chuck. And the beauty of French cooking is so many delicious dishes are so affordable. You know, beef chuck is about the same price as hamburger meat these days. And you cube it, and then I season it. And I like using a seasoning blend. There's one called Montreal Steak Seasoning, and it's got sea salt and cracked black pepper and some garlic and onion powder, and it's not full of other stuff. So I just toss the meat in the seasoning. I slice a little fresh garlic, and then I like a little extra cracked black pepper. So, but a key ingredient to beef bourguignon is pork belly or pork lardons, which is basically smoked bacon in cubes. So I'm gonna brown that first and get a little oil in my cast iron skillet. Then we're gonna sear the beef, and I'll take it from there. The other thing that I do different than Julia is I'm not a big fan of flouring meat and trying to thicken it that way. I like cornstarch. The other thing is this dish is gluten-free when you do that. And owning restaurants, that's really important to accommodate. And if you're having a dinner party, you know, it's a nice thing. Now, I love serving my beef bourguignon over rustic noodles, but you can get gluten-free noodles, or you can use potatoes, mashed potatoes if you have people that don't do gluten. But I love rustic pasta, and that's the way we do it at Regina's Kitchen. So we're gonna get started. So I'm browning my lardons, and I'm putting them in the crock pot that goes in my slow cooker. And I'm using the fat in my cast iron skillet. I'm getting it good and hot, and I'm gonna start browning my beef. How nice and brown that is, and I'm going to give you a really good example. This is where most people stop, but this is where I take it. You need it to be that brown to really get that good sauce. So the other thing people tend to wimp out on, first of all, not browning the meat enough, and secondly, not enough red wine. Well, I have the advantage of owning a wine bar, so I have a lot of leftover red wine, but you can buy cheap red wine. But you really need to cover your beef with red wine to at least about like that. And then the only thing that I add at this point is a quartered onion. And I don't brown it because my meat is nice and brown. That's gonna slow cook, and I'm not gonna serve. I'll pull that onion out because with the beef bourguignon, so I'm gonna slow cook this, and then I'll go ahead and add some carrots for now. But the other thing I do is I cook some carrots, blanch them, cook them where they're fork tender, and I add them to the dish at the very end because I like that bright color with that dark brown. And then, so once this slow cooks for about 4 hours, and I cook it on a high heat, and then I'll turn it to a medium heat. You just have to see when your meat starts to fall apart. So you do that, and then I pour all of the liquid off, and I put it in the freezer to skim the fat off the top, and that's when I add my beef stock that I've cooked my fresh herbs in. So I'll just strain that with the strainer. You don't really need, you can just use the strainer. Again, you don't have to do cheesecloth. So I'll do that, and then I will take that good beef broth, red wine broth, add a little more beef stock to it, and then I'll show you we're gonna thicken it with cornstarch. And at that time, that's when I add my pearl onions, because again, that beautiful color and that sweetness, I don't want them to be chocolate brown and take away from the beauty of the dish. So taste is always most important to me, but I like a good looking dish. So here we go, we're gonna get that going in the slow cooker, and we'll get back to finish this a little later. Okay, 3 hours in the crock pot on high, and I drained the juice off, and I put it in the freezer, and I just skimmed the fat off. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I'll put some ice cubes in this, and the fat will adhere to the ice cubes, and that's a little quick tip. So anyway, I have this, and then I have my beef stock, and again, I put my herbs in there, and I just strain this into this sauce, and much easier than having to put that in cheesecloth, etc. And then I have a slurry made with cornstarch and water, and I always make sure there are no lumps in it. And I add that, and then I'm just going to add this all back to my meat, and that cornstarch will help thicken as this continues to cook. And we'll get a nice sauce there. I'm putting it back on high to get it, let's see, back on high. Well, let's see, sorry about that. All right, back on high. And then I have my pearl onions and more carrots to add to finish this. And in a minute, you'll see the finished product.